Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, you have found your way to Kudou's Deck Building Tips Guide for the game Weiss Schwarz. This is by far my most requested topic, and the wait is over. I'm here to teach you how to build your own super duper fantastic deck from the ground up using your favorite series. My co-host for this video will be a deck type from the popular Madoka series, known as the Dead-Eyed Sayaka Beatdown. Unfortunately, this isn't the strongest deck, so if you're just looking to net deck, I'm afraid this video is not going to help you very much. Dead-Eyed Sayaka is not so much for winning games, but it sure is good at teaching how to make proper decks. Now I know that must sound confusing. That's because it is. Let's get started. As with any card game, the first thing you want to do when making a brand new Weiss Schwarz deck is figure out what your core is going to be. What is a core, you ask? A core can best be described as a deck's goal, or the point of the deck. Think of it as the deck's backbone, the number one thing that you want your opponent to have to overcome when they face you. There are countless ways to decide your core, but I'm going to teach you about the three main cores that you're going to be using in the game of Weiss Schwarz. The first and most common one is the combo core. This mainly revolves around one really super powerful card or a couple of really good combos in your deck that create some kind of problem for your opponent. I will explain how to find good cards later. Put your hand down. Next up is a character core. A character core is pretty much a deck revolving around one specific character or a couple of specific characters that you normally really like from the anime. And lastly, we have the trait core. Trait cores are the most interesting. They're the cores that revolve around not so much a character, but the traits that a character has, like glasses characters or aliens is another really popular one. Even though a lot of the cards in our Dead-Eyed Sayaka deck are going to be Sayaka based, this is still considered a combo core build. The reason being is, even though the cards just coincidentally happen to be all Sayaka based, we're mainly going to be running off of the fact that I really enjoy the turn 2 lineup. Okay. I know what the number one thing on all of your minds is right now. But Kudou, how can I tell if a card is quote unquote good? There's a variety of different ways to tell, but I'm going to give you one basic rule of thumb that you can learn with. Ladies and gentlemen, I introduce the shear line. The shear line is a power threshold that cards at certain levels are expected to be at to be considered powerful cards. What you're looking for are cards that stand above the shear line. Cards that are standing right at the shear line are considered pretty okay, and normally if they're under the shear line, they're considered pretty bad cards. Whoa, but Kudou, you don't understand. There are so many other things you can look at when looking at a card, like cards with really good effect, or cards that don't cost very much stock, or cards that have super effects like Encore. Yeah, I know, I was getting to that too. Cards with really good effects don't really apply to the shear line. The shear line is mainly used to measure a card's power when you're going to use it as a beat stick. If you'll pay attention, there actually isn't a shear line for level 3. That's because most level 3s are kinda the same when it comes to power, so you're mainly looking for their effects. You're looking for the ones that can do heals or the ones that give you other effects that boost your field in some way. So to reiterate, when you're building your deck, you mainly want to look for cards that are exceptional, and the main way you can do that is by using the shear line theory. Another good way to build your core is not so much around power, but around two basic effects. There is change, and there's combo climax. Change cards make a really good core, because they can normally turn into something one level higher than them, and if you're playing level 2 cards on level 1, you're considered to have a pretty good advantage. Cards that get stronger using something like a climax combo should also be taken into consider too. Consider what their power will be after you fulfill their requirements. If you're using cards below the shear line, they should have some kind of effect that helps you out. But you also have to accept that if they're in the front row, they're probably only going to get their effect once. If they're dead, they can't use their effect. In this case, Hollow Eyes Sayaka has a pretty decent effect where all of your other characters get plus 1000 on your opponent's turn, and it also turns into two pretty decent characters. One that's a 10,000 that doesn't have very many requirements, and another that's a 9500 with a really strange version of Super Encore, and a Super Pump ability that gives you plus 1000 for every character you can tap. Looking over the cards some more, I noticed there are two more Sayakas that just happen to work with this pretty well. There are two turn 1 Sayakas whose main purpose are to turn into Hollow Eye Sayaka. Since our main goal is to get the two characters that Hollow Eye Sayaka turns into, using them is going to be part of our core build too. So we have our core. On turn 1, we'll try to get one of the Sayakas that turns into Hollow Eyes, and then we'll try to complete its condition so that Hollow Eyes gets on the field as early as possible. Once Hollow Eyes is on the field, our game changes to trying to get out either the Witch or fighting while hurting Sayaka. This will act as our core. How many of each card you're going to run is pretty much subjective and going to be based around the other cards you plan on running in your deck. Since my turn 1s revolve around getting into Hollow Eye Sayaka, I'm only going to run 3 of each because I don't want them to outspeed how quickly I'll be able to get a Sayaka Hollow Eyes into my hand or into my waiting room. Same with Mermaid and Fighting While Hurting. Even though it would be ideal to have 4 of each of those in my deck because they're really powerful, I also have to consider that the main reason they're there is because I want something for Hollow Eyes to turn into, and I don't want them outspeeding how quickly I can get Hollow Eyes onto the field. Step 2. Get your stapler. Do some research on your deck type set. Find out if there are any cards that seem to be run in just about every deck. I know some of you are kind of against the idea of staples, but I need to explain something. We all want to be trendsetters, and nobody wants to be known as just a follower. But the reason those cards are considered staples and used in so many decks is because they are good. Don't cheat yourself out of using good cards just because you want to be known as the person who doesn't have to use cheap staples in their deck. Zeros normally have really good effects that work for a lot of different decks. They can also be pretty much used for any deck they want to because they don't require you to have one of the same color in your clock or level. So for level 0, don't worry too much about using cards that aren't in your color. Common ones to be on the lookout for are Suiciders and Brainstorm/Concentration, I guess, if you read certain sites. Also look for a really good level 0 assist. For this deck, we'll be using the Kyoko 35s, the Kyoko Suiciders, the Homeras with Brainstorm, and also the level 3 Sayaka. The next step in staple hunting isn't going to be so much around cards that are just really good for your set. Look for cards that work really well with your core or your deck idea. We're going to throw in the yellow Kyubei because we're going to be using Change a lot. And he also gives really good level 0 assist. I'll throw in a set of Kyosuke, not only because his effect is really good, but it also combos with a card from our core. See, the 5000 Sayaka actually pulls out one Kyosuke from your discard pile and puts it back in play when you turn her into Deadeyes. Backups are generally pretty good, and we actually have one pretty decent one for blue. Lastly, we'll be throwing in the level 1 6500 Sayaka to give level 1 a little bit of kick. So here's our final deck before we add our climaxes. A perfect 42 cards, awesome. Unfortunately, your deck probably doesn't look like this. Chances are we need to go to step 3, the Spackle step. This is the step where if your deck is below 42, we need to add more cards. And if it's over 42, we need to start scraping some of that off. We'll start with what to do if you're under. If you're under, look for levels where you don't have very many good attackers. If your attackers look fine, make sure your deck is running enough assist and backup. If that's fine too, then just add cards with really good tech. Cards that let you draw is a really good example. If you're over, start by looking at all cards you're running 4 of. Cut any of them that aren't important, like aren't part of your core for example, down to 3. You don't really need any more than 16 level 0s, so if you're over in your level 0s, cut them down to 16. Look at your level 1 and 2 lineup. If each of them are running 3 or more beat sticks, then cut them down until you only have 2 beat sticks in each level. If after all of this you still have too many cards, then look for cards that have really good tech but don't really do much for your core. Cards with good effects are good, but they can't get in the way of your deck's main priority, its core. If your deck is still too big, take things like stock into consideration. If you're going to be running a super expensive level 1 lineup, then make sure your level 2s aren't going to be just as expensive. A good rule of thumb here is if you're playing really consistently, attacking with good numbers each turn, and when you level up you still have less than 4 cards in your stock, your tech was too expensive that level. Don't forget, just because you're cutting the cards now doesn't mean you can't just make adjustments later. Do some playtesting, see which cards work for you and which cards don't. That is the only true way you will make a deck you're happy with. Nobody makes a perfect deck the first time they make the deck, except that you will be making changes in the future. The final step, choosing your climaxes. This is ridiculously easy, so let's just get it all out of the way. If your deck has 3 climax combos, go 3-3-2. Go 4-2-2 if one of your climax combos is just way more important than the other two. If your deck has 2 climax combos in it, then duh. If your deck only has 1 climax combo in it, then use 4 of that one and then look for ones with really good triggers. Use triggers or effects that you really personally like using. Or you can also go online and look up which climaxes are considered the best kinds of triggers or effects. And there you have it, folks. You just built a Weiss Deck from the ground up. Oh, what? What was that now? You need more? You're still kind of confused? Okay, look. I do have kind of a template that you can follow to make your deck, but I am going to give you a warning. Different sets and different deck types are powerful at different times. One template, no matter how well it's made, cannot possibly even come close to covering every single deck type out there. So I will give you a template that you can follow to make your deck, but your deck will be way more powerful if you derive away from this and actually look up what kind of cards make your deck run so well. One more time, I will give you a template that you can follow, and it does work pretty well, but it is in no way guaranteed to make you a tournament winning deck. Your deck number should look something a little along the lines of this. A well-rounded number for assists is 7, 4 at level 0 and 3 at a different level, but way stronger. For backups, you generally don't want to run any less than 3. At level 0, you want to run something offensively and defensively, so try 4 either suiciders or beaters, and 4 assists or really good tech. If you ran 4 suicides, run 3 beat sticks. If you ran 4 beat sticks, use 3 suicides. If you didn't run 4 assists for whatever reason, then put 3 assists here now. Lastly, try to fit in 2 cards with Brainstorm. If you can't find 2 cards with Brainstorm that you like or you can use, then just put 2 cards that give you really good tech, like drawing cards. At level 1, run your main beater at 4. You want to try and find a card that has really good tech and run it at 3. If you can't, then just run another beater at 3. The last spot should go to something else that also has really good tech, because you don't want to be running too many beaters. You can run your other 3 assists here, but most deck types have better assists at level 2, and you can hold out that long. At level 2, start with your main beater at 4. This is the most important level of the game, so you want something pretty strong here. Ideally, you can fit in 3 really good assist cards here. If you can't, put in another beater. Lastly, if you couldn't find a really good backup to use at level 1 for your 3 tech, try to fit it in here. If not, then you can afford to put in 3 beaters at level 2 if you really have to, but ideally you want to find some kind of tech to use as your 3rd slot if you have 2 beaters already. At level 3, aim to use 4 of whatever your color's healer is. If your color is unlucky enough to not have a healer, then it better be able to kill something. If the deck you decided to use has access to another really good level 3, then go ahead and throw it here at 2. Another healer would be Godly, but if you're not lucky enough to have that, then go ahead and throw in a card with really good tech. If you also don't have a card with really good tech, then go ahead and make this a beater if your first level 3 was a healer of some kind. If you only have access to 1 level 3 or 1 good level 3, then go ahead and throw the other 2 cards in wherever else they're needed. A 4th backup is definitely great, and an 8th assist definitely won't hurt anybody. Climaxes can be handled the same way as they were before. Last warning, This template will make you a really decent deck, but the only way to reach the full potential of your deck type is to break away from this and make something more suited to your deck style. As I stated before, one template cannot possibly cover every deck type out there. Hopefully I met everybody's expectations on this video. I know you waited a whole lot of time for it. If you liked it, taking a second to comment or like would really help me out a whole lot. And you know, the subscribe button's right there. And with that, I'm off to try to play some Final Fantasy XIV.
Enjoy your card game, nerds!